December 1799, Philadelphia. The president's house is quiet. George Washington is gravely ill, far more seriously than the public has been told. Official notices describe a seasonal condition, nothing more. Inside the residence, however, access is restricted. Meetings are canceled. Visitors are screened. The reality is understood by everyone close to him. Washington is dying. On one of those final days, a sealed envelope arrives at the president's office. It is not processed like other correspondence. There is no sender listed, no date stamped, no registry number assigned. The envelope does not appear in the incoming records ledger. Washington opens it privately. The only person present is his personal secretary, Tobias Lear. Years later, Lear will leave behind a brief written recollection of that moment. He does not describe the contents. He does not speculate. He records only one observation. The president stopped reading. Washington does not place the letter among state papers. He does not store it in the locked cabinets reserved for sensitive government documents. Instead, he leaves it beside his bed. This is unusual. Washington is known for his discipline with records. Every document has a system. Every paper has a place. The next day, two men are summoned to the room. No clerk is present. No minutes are taken. No transcript exists. What is known is what follows. After that meeting, a quiet internal decision is made. Certain materials from Washington's final days will not be transferred into public archives. The order is not written, it is communicated verbally, and it is obeyed. On December 14, 1799, George Washington dies. As his belongings are inventoried, the process appears thorough. Clothing is cataloged. Personal effects are logged. Notes and correspondence are reviewed. Yet one item is missing from the list. In the inventory ledger for that day, there is a blank line. Next to it, added later in different handwriting, is a short annotation, "Not transferred." No explanation follows. When the early National Archives begin organizing Washington's papers, his correspondence is treated as foundational material. These documents will define the moral and political legacy of the new republic. Most letters are preserved. Some are restricted. But one file is handled differently. It is not destroyed. It is not marked missing. It is handled as though it never existed. Years later, during early archive reorganizations, clerks notice an anomaly. A reference code appears in the system without content attached. No document, no summary, just a classification marker. The explanation given each time is the same: presidential instruction. No written directive can be found, no signature, no date, only Washington's name. From that moment forward, the file is never officially declared lost. Declaring it lost would require acknowledging its existence. Instead, a more effective approach is taken. The record is left empty, and that emptiness becomes part of the archive itself. In the decade following George Washington's death, the United States remained fragile. The Constitution was in force, but its limits were still being tested. Federal authority and state power existed in a delicate balance. In this climate, Washington's personal writings were treated not merely as history, but as guidance. That is when the unopened spaces began to draw quiet attention. In 1804, Tobias Lear was asked to write a reflective account of Washington's final days. The request was formal. The intention was historical preservation. Lear complied. His manuscript is detailed. He describes Washington's health, his visitors, his demeanor. Yet, in one passage, the text abruptly stops mid-thought. The sentence ends with the words, "In his final days there were certain matters that—" There is no continuation. This is unusual. Lear's other writings show no such hesitation, no abandoned sentences. For years, historians interpret this as personal restraint until additional inconsistencies surface. In 1811, during a Senate library review, an unsigned handwritten note is discovered among uncatalogued materials. The paper, ink, and handwriting match Washington's known correspondence from 1799. There is no envelope, no context. The note contains a single sentence. "The future will not be as stable as they believe." The note is never formally archived. It is removed from circulation. The document itself disappears, but a classification slip remains behind. On it, one phrase is written, "Context removed." Around the same time, the language used by Washington's contemporaries begins to shift. Timothy Pickering, once direct in his political commentary, becomes cautious. In later writings, he references Washington's concerns obliquely. He speaks of potential divisions and unspoken risks, but never attributes these thoughts to a specific document. No direct quotations appear. This restraint is not accidental. In 1819, a closed session of the House of Representatives is convened. The official topic is listed as Archive Organization. Portions of the meeting notes are withheld from publication. Within those withheld sections, the handling of early presidential documents is discussed. The guiding principle is stated clearly. Interpretations that may undermine national cohesion are to be separated from historical context. This phrase will reappear in internal communications for decades. By the 1830s, historians requesting access to Washington's final correspondence notice irregularities. The numbering sequence of letters contains gaps. When questioned, archivists offer a standard response. Certain materials are under preservation restrictions. Which materials, they do not say. Over time, these absences become normalized. Younger scholars inherit the silence. Challenging it risks losing access altogether. And so Washington's late reflections, particularly those from 1799, fade from academic discourse. What disappears is not a single document, but a pattern. The surviving letters from Washington's final year hint at recurring themes: concerns about unity, anxiety over centralized power, warnings about internal fracture. But these ideas never appear fully articulated. They exist only in fragments, and those fragments cluster around 1 year. 1799, the final official document bearing Washington's signature, is routine, administrative, unremarkable. After that, the record falls silent, not just from Washington, but from those closest to him. No one speaks plainly. No one cites text. At this point, the question sharpens. If the missing letter were trivial, why was it treated with such care? It was not destroyed, because destruction leaves traces. Instead, a subtler method was applied. The context was removed. The document lost its voice. But the absence remained, and in the final section that absence will begin to speak. By the 1840s, George Washington's personal correspondence was officially considered complete. Archive catalogs were revised. Irregularities were absorbed into technical explanations. Within academic circles, the missing material from 1799 was increasingly described as a consequence of time, ordinary loss, nothing more. But not everyone accepted that conclusion. In 1848, a junior clerk temporarily assigned to the National Archives noticed something subtle while cross-referencing original catalogs with newer index systems. The same reference code appeared twice, but with different annotations. In one ledger, the document was labeled Personal Note. In another, it was marked Not Transferred. The document itself was nowhere to be found. The clerk reported the inconsistency. The response he received was brief and procedural. The discrepancy originates from early classification errors. The matter was closed, yet similar anomalies continued to surface. Late 19th century biographies of Washington contained contradictions regarding his final weeks. Some portrayed him as calm and resolved. Others hinted at unease, at an unspoken burden. None cited a primary source, because there was none available to cite. As the 20th century began, the United States had become a global power. The nation's founding figures were no longer examined as individuals, but as symbols. Washington represented stability, restraint, unity. Any unresolved uncertainty from his final days conflicted with that image. And so the silence hardened into tradition. In 1932, during preparations for the bicentennial of Washington's birth, a special exhibition was assembled. Select documents were displayed publicly for the first time. In the exhibition catalog, under the heading Final Correspondence, there was an empty entry, a page number, a description, no content. Most visitors passed without noticing. Those who did notice did not ask questions. By then, questioning had consequences. Washington's last recorded words, as they appear in textbooks today, were reconstructed decades after his death. They are not transcribed from a direct document. There is no verified original text, no authenticated final statement, only repetition, passed from one account to another. And repetition is not the same as record. Today, several documents dated to 1799 remain sealed under the justification of public stability. Their contents are unknown, but their existence is indirectly confirmed through classification codes and persistent empty fields in archival systems. The question at this point is no longer speculative. If Washington's final letter held no significance, it would not have required 2 centuries of careful containment. Perhaps the issue was never prediction. Perhaps it was recognition. Some warnings are not dangerous because they are wrong, but because they are early. Spoken too soon, they fracture instead of unite. And so the letter was never shared, or if it was read, it was buried. George Washington's forbidden letter is not a document preserved in history. It is a gap, and sometimes history speaks most clearly through what it refuses to say. If what unsettled you here was not what was written but what was missing, you are not alone. Some records are never erased, they are delayed. Share your thoughts in the comments. This channel does not publish finished histories. Some files remain open, others wait. If you want to see which records resurface next, subscribe. Because certain warnings do not disappear, they wait.